work on Ms. Gomez.
Yeah,
But we want to go ahead and welcome everyone who has decided to join us today. We really appreciate your presence and being here. If you look, we want you to fill out an attendance form. About to be attached now. And we appreciate if you can take the next 30 seconds to fill out this attendance form for this session. Some housekeeping rules, you've probably heard them in several other sessions or on the main stage. We will have a question and answer period during the end. So if you request to share your video, we will let you on then. During the presentation, you definitely can ask questions in the chat, so please use that feature. Just talked about the attendance form. The session is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel. And to enlarge the presentation screen, all you have to do is double click on that particular window on your computer. And of course, by now, they said the recommended browser to use is Chrome. The session is also being closed caption. Okay, so I'll go find that link again. I have it somewhere. But I wanted to introduce our presenters, and that way they could go ahead and get started. We have the Black and Latino girls in Georgia, removing barriers to computer science education. We have three presenters here. Okay, sorry, my screen just moved to a different thing. One, we have Ms. Felicia Thompson, who's a doctoral student at Georgia State University in educational policy and studies with a concentration in research, measurement, and statistics, holds a BA in psychology from Spelman. So my Spelman sister, I'm a Morehouse man, so the host. Excuse me, and a master's of public administration from Albany State University. She is an institutional research analyst by day and a grant writing assistant for Georgia State University Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning by night. And her research interests are in developing and scaling innovative K-12 initiatives to encourage girls of color to explore STEM concepts. Ms. Gomez, who will be joining us shortly, is the founder and STEM principal consultant at STEM Hire, she is passionate entrepreneur with a background in the nonprofit and educational sectors. She is an educational consulting firm, STEM Principal Consultant, with a strong commitment to close the educational and opportunity gaps in STEM to improve educational outcomes, especially for Black and Latino youth. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Catalina Edward Mounds, who is the founder and director at the Center for Educational Opportunities, as well as Professional Management Information Systems at Albany State University. She received a PhD in Instructional Technology from Wayne State University, MA in Economics and Entrepreneurship for educators from University of Delaware, and an MS in Computer Science from Wayne State University, and BS in Computer Science from Spelman College. Spelman! And she is a first-generation college graduate, so we would definitely love to thank all of our presenters for being here, and I am going to pass it over to you all.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. And so we will hope that Ms. Gomez will hop in with us. And so, again, thank you for the wonderful introductions, and especially thank you for the co-sponsors of today's event, Georgia Tech's Constellations Center, as well as the Georgia Department of Education, CS for GA, as well as Computer Science Teachers Association. And so I'll give you a little bit of background of how we kind of got started. The three of us kind of got involved in this project. Felicia Thompson, myself, and Sabrina were members of the 2019-2020 cohort of the Education Policy Fellows Program. And the beauty of that program is that it really afforded us the opportunity to understand the landscape of education, from financing to the role of school resource officers and the like. And one of the outcomes of engaging in that program is that we were required to involve ourselves in a project that we were passionate about. And as you read from or heard from the dossier, all of us have interest in and a passion for girls, and particularly Black and Latina girls, engaging in this computer science space. And so what you'll hear in the next hour or so is really some information from the research that supports the work that we did through some qualitative work, some narratives that we were able to conduct throughout the state. And what we hope to have happen is at the end that there is a call to action that we will allow teachers and non-teacher engagers who are participating today to really take away some strategies that we think might be helpful in including more Black and Latina girls. And so again, we thank you for this opportunity. And so it's interesting because throughout the day, I've heard a lot of the sessions and they have been phenomenal. And one of the sessions that has stuck with me was remarks by Dr. Camus. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name incorrectly.
Kamau.
Who really shared that it is our responsibility now to be courageous, really to ask the tough questions that under these circumstances and our role in computer science, the burden is even heavier than ever. And we really have an extraordinary opportunity to infuse computer science in the lives of kids, particularly Black and brown kids. And so most of the work that's done today through today's conference, through professional development work, really hinges on how to teach computer science. I went to a great workshop earlier on Calypso and AI, artificial intelligence. And today's session also really engages teachers in what to teach, from Python to Tinker to Scratch. But one of the things that we wanted to do differently with our presentation is to help you and to have you have an opportunity to think about why. And some of you have probably seen this golden circle that was developed by Simon Sinek, who's an international management guru who really works with organizations, helping them understand why do they do what they do. Because most companies know what they do and how they do it, but very, very few companies know why. And so one of the things that we'd like to just maybe take a moment for, just a few moments now, to ask your teachers why. And I know that each of us have our own whys, because for me, I remember working in business and industry as a computer scientist after I left Spelman. And for the many years I was at Burroughs and then Unisys, there were very few people of color around me. In fact, I remember being only one of 2 women of color. And then one of only 3 people of color in the industry. And so my why was I pivoted and left industry because I wanted to go into higher ed, because I thought that being in front of my students and as a mentor, as a face, as a person, as a touchy-feely person that I can actually be engaged in the lives and be able to teach our students was what drove me to computer science. And so I'll yield and have Sabrina and Phylicia to share, what was your why?
Okay, yes, I'll go ahead and share. Hopefully Sabrina can jump on in just a minute. But for me, I do not have a computer science background, if you recall from my bio. But the interest in computer science or in STEM in general was just through conversation with some of my friends who are Black women in the STEM field, and also just knowing that there was an opportunity for me to enter that field, but I didn't know what that looked like for me. So just being on the outside looking in, I know that there are a lot of opportunities in STEM for Black Latina girls, and I feel that there has to be some effort from within as well as from the outside to help those who are like me, who may not know anything about STEM or the benefits or how it relates to what I was good at or how I can grow from that. So I saw it as an opportunity for me to kind of be an ally to computer science along with other STEM fields.
Sabrina?
Her video isn't on yet. I don't know if she's in the chat room where she can type a few things, but her video isn't back yet. We're working on it.
No problem. So Babu, are you able to see our chat session? Because I'm sharing, I'm unable to see the chat dialogue. So both you and Phylicia will have to share some of the feedback on what are the teachers and the non-teachers who are in the panel saying about their why.
Okay. We haven't seen any response yet. So you could go ahead and type in, what is your why? Why are you in this field? So forth and so on. What is your goal? What is your passion? What is your vision? And we'll go ahead and share that information with the presenters. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And so we'll continue. Are you able to see feedback now? Just let me know when it's time to move on, because again, I can't see you.
Okay. So yeah, we have one that says they just really enjoy teaching. This is from Kathleen Kleiner. You know, they just really enjoy teaching.
Great.
Oh.
Thank you.
And then one, Shannon Davis states that she just really wants to make an impact on the future. We also have Victor Hicks, and his vision is to inspire children of color to attend HBCUs and pursue those STEAM careers.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, yeah, all of the responses are now flowing in.
And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to capture those, because I think that that's important in furthering the work that we're doing. And so I'll continue on and we'll share a little bit. So what happened throughout this project is that we had the opportunity to engage in conversations with young Black, African-American, Latina women throughout the state. And ultimately our goal today is to be able to share some of the findings from that experience.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just saw Ms. Gomez, so I did at least want to get her why in there.
Yes. Great.
Okay, I apologize for cutting you off.
No problem. Perfect. No problem.
But yeah, her why is she is in CS and STEM more broadly, because to her it is a social and economic issue. If we do not prepare Black and Latino girls to take advantage of the economic opportunities that CS present, then we are not setting them up for success.
Thank you. Absolutely. And we certainly agree with that, because Sabrina recognizes that as we prepare Black and Latina girls for computer science expertise, then that certainly creates and provides opportunities for them to be better citizens and engage in the economic opportunities that avail. And so in addition to today's mission of sharing the voices and experiences of those leaders, parents, girls, and in computer science, we wanted to gain a better understanding and a deeper understanding of the challenges that exist as we look at trying to make more computer science more equitable, and more inclusive. And then finally, once again, we'll share some of what the research is saying about strategies in which we can utilize to increase participation. And so what we did is that we actually came up with some research questions that we wanted to ask girls, parents, out-of-school leaders, and teachers as to, you know, what are some of those kinds of things that excites and draws them toward the computer science discipline. And we had to ask ourselves questions even about what drives men more so to be in this dominated space. When we did this presentation for the Ed Policy program, in fact, we had the opportunity to share a video of the launch of the desktop, which if you look at the data on girls' involvement in computer science before around 1984, 85, it was pretty high. And then when corporations started launching desktop computers, we saw a dip because of how technology and computer science was being marketed more as a boys' kinds of job. And so one of the other research questions that we wanted to understand is what are the challenges that exist for Black and Latina girls who wanted to participate in computer science. So what we've learned is that there's been interest, but unfortunately the opportunities don't necessarily avail. And then finally, in what ways can we strengthen the ecosystem so that Black girls in computer science can be successful. Because again, from the remarks earlier by Dr. Bob, it was really a question of, if we just create a linear system and one that is not iterative and one that's not provide an opportunity for all of us to work collaboratively together and to create a pipeline, as one of the attendees said, then it becomes really hard to create and replicate more faculty who then in turn can, and teachers who then in turn inspire Black girls and Latina to engage. And so what you'll see next really are some feedback from the interviews. And so what each of us did was that we had the opportunity to interview teachers, out-of-school leaders, parents, and young women in our geographic region. I am in South Georgia, in the southern part of the state. Phylicia is in the Fulton County area, and Sabrina is up in Gwinnett County. And so what it did was it really afforded us a chance to just hear their voices. And I know oftentimes when you conduct research, you think that you have to have these large numbers of participants. But when it comes to qualitative studies, I think it's value added to listen to marginalized communities, because oftentimes those are the voices that we don't hear. And so we hope that what you'll hear next are some of the outcomes as we've translated them, if you will, onto the screen. It's from those interviews. Phylicia?
See if you can unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Oh, and I will talk about some interview insight that we gathered, some information we gathered from the interviews we conducted with our young girls, their parents, teachers, as well as out-of-school time leaders. The first question that we asked several questions, and one that stood out to us was, what draws and excites you about computer science, and what drives you to persist in male-dominated spaces? Being able to learn coding makes me feel like I can change the world. Now, what stood out to us about that is, and I think Catalina will kind of touch on this a little bit later, but girls like to have jobs where they feel like they're changing the world or they're making a difference. So we have to allow our girls to understand how computer science can be that field for them. They can make those types of changes in the world by being in this field. I was so excited and fascinated that my teacher, Miss Banks, who looks like me, is doing something I like to do. Young girls also like to see their mentors and their coaches that look like them. And that's just not, not necessarily the same gender, but also the same nationality or race or ethnicity. So the more our girls see women that look like them in this field and being successful in this field, the more likely they are to engage in computer science. And I also want to point out that, we have to make sure that our girls know that these women are just normal, regular, everyday women, and they too can be just like them. I can be creative in STEM and CS. Lots of people tell you, oh, you like art, so you can't like science, but it's not really that. So again, it's just allowing our girls to understand that you can marry STEM with other social skills and other fields that are not typically associated with STEM. Now STEM is in everything. So girls, if they understand that STEM can be applicable to other fields such as art or psychology, if they have that interest, then they will understand how important it is to explore those fields, especially in technology and computer science. I take an extra effort to support and encourage her to take chances and to center herself around like-minded people in the field. And that's definitely one that stood out, because we need that those support systems from parents and from communities to step in and encourage Black and Latina girls to go into those fields that are typically outside of the norm for them. So as long as they have that support system from family, friends, and their community, they're likely to engage in those fields even further. Now we'll talk about the challenges that exist for Black and Latina girls participating in computer science. If I have 2 or more girls involved, girls will continue to participate in computer science. Now, this quote addresses the idea that computer science is such a male-dominated field that girls only feel a sense of belonging if she's not alone in that space. It's kind of hard to step up if you're the only girl in the group. Similarly to the previous quote, girls find it challenging to be the only girl in computer science settings, and this is discouraging girls from entering that space and confidently excelling simply because they do not have peers in that space that look like they do, or coaches or mentors that look like them. A teacher told me it is a lot of programming and I just don't think it would be something you like. As teachers, you hold authoritative roles in the lives of our students. Fortunately, and sometimes unfortunately, the words you speak to or over your students has an impact on how they view themselves and how they view the world. And although it may not be intentional, dissuading language can serve as a barrier that contributes to or create the disinterest in certain areas, such as STEM for girls. This student could have easily accepted what was told to her and never explored STEM beyond that interaction. I work harder than most boys, like all the time, but they always get told, "Oh, you're so smart," and they get it easily, so they're considered smart. Again, discouraging language from individuals in a student's lives, such as their parents, teachers, administrators, or even their friends and family, can deter them from considering STEM career options, especially if the same idea of "you don't belong" is repetitive and is embedded in their minds constantly. This forces girls to continue to follow those traditional career paths that are associated with being a woman, and it is important that we create environments in which Black and Latina girls feel comfortable and confident in computer science settings, and that means we have to be mindful and strategic when interacting and conversing with Black and Latino girls about computer science.
Thank you, Felicia. Another question that we wanted to engage the participants in is really this understanding of ecosystem. And we shared a few comments earlier, but seeing engineers and other women of color in the careers that students are able to relate to. I have fond memories, again, of being a Black girl in Detroit. And in fact, my experience to computer science was pretty organic. When I was in high school in the 80s, my goal was to be an executive secretary. And at the time, in public education, they were teaching typing and shorthand. And little did I know, typing more than 150 words per minute would be beneficial, because later when I went to college and started writing COBOL code, which, as you know, is pretty tedious in writing, that came in handy. And so what happens is we need to help girls, Black and brown girls, understand that there are skill sets that they may possess now that are certainly transferable to computer science environments. And in addition to that, it's important that we engage and expose girls to other women of color who are in these spaces. And a way to help build those ecosystems, obviously, is engaging schools with communities and corporations. Access and exposure, more students being an advocate and a role model. Again, I think that while what's happening, because Black and brown girls are marginalized already and not getting the exposure that they need, then what's happening is that on the higher education scale, we don't see a lot of Black and brown teachers, professors that are in turn mentoring and role modeling. And so again, we start losing more and more girls who are interested in the profession. In addition, we need to teach girls not to be perfect. Girls are often taught that they have to be perfect. They have to be the best. And we know, all of us on this call and those who are participating in today's workshop understand that computer science is a very iterative, trial and error profession. It's a profession that is really highly intensely involved in problem solving. And we need to help girls understand that failure is a part of the profession and that they can learn by doing. In addition, and we can all once again agree that parents really play a big role in ensuring that their kids are involved in programs. I know our daughter, we only have one, when she was younger, would involve herself in Kennesaw State University and Georgia Gwinnett College had programs, Saturday Science Academies. And those programs were really instrumental in her wanting to be a computer science major, because oftentimes when she went to those programs, if she was one or two, at least, of someone of color, she felt like she belonged. And so we need to also emphasize how big of a change in the world you can make by simply being a computer scientist. And again, I resonate with the comments that were made earlier. And in fact, a professor who just recently did the workshop on computer science AP, it's really helping girls understand that there's such great impact and certainly great opportunities in the computer science space beyond just programming. And so we're going to take a pause for a moment. We're now at 3:11 to maybe ask you, the audience, what are you hearing from your Black and Latina girls? What are you hearing from your students when they are in computer science spaces in the absence of Black and brown girls? I mean, in what ways do you think that you can help to draw girls to the computer science profession? And again, I can't see the comments, so Felicia and Sabrina, you'll monitor those.
So one of the things, responses from Ms. Sandra Watts that she says she gets is, we can't do it. This is too hard. That's in my acting voice.
And you know what? I think that's a fair observation. I think that it's because girls are often taught that it's something that's way over their heads, and it's not doable. But I think that from the workshops we've learned today, there are ways to make it palatable. But you'll see in a moment, some of the research says that the girls actually believe and know that they can overcome obstacles. So there's a question of access, and then there's a question of opportunity. And so while girls are getting a chance to have access, because computer science may exist at their school, unfortunately, they're not jumping in and taking those opportunities.
Okay, we have another comment from Victor Hicks that talks about how his girls appreciate, seeing role models, but it has to be relevant to them, because if not, they're going to struggle, with if other people trying to make it relevant to them, they need to see themselves.
And I can address that because Meg also mentioned that girls say, I love creativity, and that doesn't have anything to do with my career interest. And we just have to create those connections for them. How does computer science relate to other fields that are not considered computer science fields? So I saw someone mentioned computer science and art is one of their favorite projects, or computer science and healthcare. How can you marry computer science with other interests that girls are drawn to, so they can see the value in computer science and understand the value it adds to them as individuals? And we'll talk about social skills and how you develop so many different social and professional skills through computer science, and they can be transferable, not to other fields that are not strictly computer science or STEM fields.
Okay. And I see that Ms. Aisha Chadwick states that still tries to encourage the young ladies, even if they're the only ones that's pursuing that or in that field or what have you, to find ways to do it. If that's their interest and that's their talents, you need to go ahead and go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And one of the things, and looking at this picture every time, looking at the young girls' faces, is the work of Black Girls Code is just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that we grapple with really is creating this really strong pipeline, because while girls may be engaged in coding in K through 12 spaces, whenever they leave those spaces and they enter higher education, they're often the only girls. If they're going to PWIs, they may be the only Black in that program. In fact, when I was in my PhD program, I initially started out in a PhD in computer science at Wayne State, and I was the only Black girl in the program. And so I pivoted because I just didn't see myself in that space because, of course, for the same reasons, lack of mentors. But again, we need to create a strong pipeline in higher education, as well as through these doctoral programs. I'll give a shout out to Dr. Juan Gilbert, who's a professor at the University of Florida, who is really the godfather of trying to increase the numbers of professors of African-American faculty of color in computer science. Mm-hmm. So what we'll do now, it's 3:15, we're gonna share a few imperatives and recommendations that we may have for the audience, and then we will proceed with some strategies, and then have an opportunity to have some dialogue with the participants.
Okay. All righty. Now we talked about pretty much like our interviews and what our girls were saying. And then we also based our interview questions and our interests off of some of the historical and social and psychological barriers that we're aware of that girls are facing, Black and Latino girls are facing in this computer science space. So we'll discuss each one of these. First, we should recognize intersectionality in our everyday practice. We have to name it, own it, and discuss it. Intersectionality is a term that was coined by lawyer, civil rights activist, and college professor Kimberly Crenshaw, and it describes the complex interaction between race, gender, class, sexual orientation, and other individual identities, and the dynamics of power and oppression as it relates to the overlap of two or more of these identities. For women of color, the effects of racism and sexism on educational, social, and occupational outcomes cannot be fully investigated if race and gender are examined separately. The experiences of Black and Latino women are unique when compared to those of white women and when compared to those of Black and Latino men. Within STEM fields, especially in the technology pipeline, the combination of racism and sexism experienced by women of color begins early in access and participation in computer science spaces, and it continues through post-secondary education and culminates into exclusion of women at all levels of the technology workforce and entrepreneurship. If we refer back to some of the quotes that we mentioned earlier, if you remember the teacher that told the student, it is a lot of programming and I just don't think you'd be good at it. That was perplexing because is it foreign to think that she was being dissuaded because of her gender, or was it because of her race, or a combination of the two? Do you think the conversation would have been different had she not been of color, or had she not been a girl? Realistically, we have to identify, understand, and be prepared to confront the barriers faced by Black and Latino girls within the computer science and technology space. Otherwise, interventions will not be effective, they will not be successful, and lack what we need in order for those girls to be successful. Now, when we're considering, we'll have to also examine the geography of opportunity, and that means considering our resource allocation as well as our school and community partnerships. Initially, when we started planning and researching this topic, we were focusing on the challenges of rural Georgia compared to urban areas in Georgia, as we mentioned, based on the counties in which we selected our interviewees. And we noticed that, in rural areas, they are already dwellings of systematic racial, gender, and class issues, and they do not necessarily have the access or the exposure to resources that urban areas typically have access to. But because of today's state of affairs with COVID-19, rural and urban areas will both have to have those tough conversations about resource allocation. And these conversations could possibly lead to diminishing or completely eliminating funds or resources that were earmarked for additional computer science initiatives and programs. Now, this presents an opportunity for schools and community organizations to partner, as well as local businesses. These community partners can be relied on to provide those resources that school systems are lacking. We typically think of funding as money, which is not far-fetched. Of course, we need the money, but these businesses also have additional resources that they can provide, such as facilities to host computer science training, utilizing their employees as computer science coaches or mentors or teachers for our young girls in these communities. We'll also need to prioritize family and community involvement. If you are familiar with Latino families and African American families, we have a history and a culture of being communal and symbiotic. Latino families tend to be highly group oriented. There's a strong emphasis placed on family, and is the major source of one's identity and protection against the hardships of life. This sense of family belonging is intense and limited to family and close friends. The family model is an extended one. It includes grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, and just close friends who are not biological, but they're still considered to be a part of the immediate family. Similarly to Latino families, Black families are collective and build communities amongst themselves. The structure of the Black family has been the cornerstone of our culture since slavery, and has enabled survival through some of the most tumultuous historical times. And as the civil rights movement yielded positive results, we saw a decline or a decrease or kind of an unravel of the Black families, and it was a dramatic shift in the cultural patterns that we were used to, and this gradual decline of explicit systematic barriers made the world more accessible, and family cohesiveness and identity became a little diluted as a result of that. But although Black and Latino cultures have an element of support and collectivism that has been heavily researched, Black and Latino families are reluctant to engage in their children's education. And there are several factors that we can consider or that we know are likely contribute to their lack of involvement, and that can be socioeconomic status, language barriers, lack of childcare for other children so they can engage with their children, with children individually, as well as low levels of education. And now it appears that teachers are putting that responsibility on parents to educate their children, or the school system. And it puts me in the mind of the bystander effect. And the bystander effect is the psychosocial concept that says that people are less likely to help if others are present, and they rely on others to help in that particular situation. So it kind of makes me think that parents are, or the community has taken on the bystander effect and relying on school systems and teachers to educate and instruct our children, when it should be a collective effort from everyone involved. There is a need for students and parents to be more involved in their learning process, especially when it comes to computer science and computer literacy. Again, if we think about COVID-19, how we took a major shift, every educational institution that I know of, and probably everyone nationwide, had to go to some form of digital platform in order for students to maintain their education. But I know I heard of instances where the inability to fulfill their responsibilities as students were affected because they didn't have computers, or they didn't know how to operate them, or they didn't know how to access the platform that the schools were providing for them. So we definitely need to focus on not only providing that space for our students, our Black and Latina girls, to be welcome into computer science, but we have to prepare them as well as their parents to be open to entering that space and becoming more literate in computing.
Thank you, Felicia. And one of the things before we go to the next slide is, and again, I'll highlight the work that she just shared, is, you know, the concepts and the research around intersectionality, bystander effect, and certainly geography of opportunity. Really, all three speak to this really important factor. And it's funny because when Senior Director Bob spoke earlier about this notion of being able to provide a counter argument, support to what the counter arguments are saying. Because there's this belief that some Black and brown kids, particularly girls, are lazy or they're not interested. But the reality is that there's research that there's some rationale behind why there's a lack of engagement. And so thank you for that, Felicia. And again, it's important that we fortify our arguments and the importance of engaging Black and brown girls in computer science. And so we will share a few strategies that we've thought about, that we've gleaned from a few studies that you'll see listed at the bottom. And while we recognize that, again, that both teachers and non-teachers are in the platform in this discussion today, we'll just share a few recommendations that you can deploy. And in the absence of time, I won't read all of these on the screen because we're now at about 3:25 with maybe 15 or so minutes for Q&A. You know, really big, important one, and if you don't know about JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion for the long term, and that is not to say that we should be reactive, but I think that there is certainly the need for engaging girls, Black and brown girls, in computer science programs that really help them to understand justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. But being critical to that is really designing with culture in mind. I think the girls, we know from the research that the girls, Black and brown girls, are interested, but as Phylicia just shared, it's important that we infuse culture in what we do, that we create programs and projects where girls have a sense of belonging and belongingness. That's a new buzzword. And I think that it's important that we practice cultural humility. Oftentimes when we hear about teachers, and I mean, I'm a teacher, right? So we oftentimes teach the way that we're taught. But when you're trying to engage Black and brown girls in computer science, we do have to kind of shift the way that we teach in a way that is certainly more culturally responsive and designed with culture in mind. And one of the things I think about also is Black and Latina girls come from very unique experiences. Again, I'm one of those Black girls. And so when you start talking about programming examples and programming scenarios that you provide, like today we were doing a great robotics Calypso and the cloud, AI in the cloud, it's really important that we start looking at examples. So in rural Georgia, the big thing that we deal with really is food deserts. And so it's hard for kids to learn to program when they're challenged with food issues. And so in what ways can we infuse things, important topics like food deserts and access? And so for the non-teaching leaders, it's important, just from the research, these are some recommendations. And I put there more interest, less exposure. What that simply means is that according to the research, Black and Latina girls actually have expressed more interest in working in programs. I'm not looking at the numbers right now, but their numbers in terms of the percent, if it was on a 100 scale, they had like 92% are interested in computer science, more so even than Caucasian girls. But unfortunately, the numbers are just flipped upside down when it comes to exposure. And so we have to ask ourselves the question as teachers and leaders, if girls are interested, then what can we do to increase exposure? There's research that says that while superintendents think that engaging computer science in the schools is important for Black and brown girls, unfortunately, then, you know, if you don't have the resources to support that interest, then that becomes a challenge. And then speaking, in addition, non-teacher leaders, one of the things that we've been thinking about, and I think Phylicia has reiterated it, is as we teach computer science, try to find innovative ways to marry and to connect computer science to other disciplines. And one in particular that the research says is really entrepreneurship. And I'm looking at some numbers here, and it says by 2060, the census projects that Black and brown women, Black and Latina women will comprise the greatest population in the United States. And it also says, even from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that 1/4 of the total economy will be based on computer jobs. And then further, it reads that some 80% of the new startups in America today are by Black women and Latina women. So it would behoove us to start looking at ways to connect computer science to entrepreneurship, because it will afford, as Phylicia denoted, opportunity for girls to kind of integrate interests. It may be artistic interests, that helps to support computer science and the like. And we'll be happy to share today's deck with you as well. And so now we're at 3:29, so that gives us some time. And so what we'd like to do is really take some time to, we had hoped to be 3 breakout sessions for the 3 of us, but I'm not sure that Hop-In will afford us the opportunity to do that. So what question might you have of us? So that's question number 1. And again, you can put it into the chat box and we'll try to address those questions. And then 2, what 1 or 2 things would you say would be recommendations on next steps, right? Because as we move away from today's workshop, obviously as teachers we'll have a lot more widgets and a lot more resources, and we can go back and do a lot more stuff. But the question too is, how do you draw in these marginalized populations into a space that is so critically needed? And then finally, again, any thoughts or reactions for what you're hearing? What are you hearing, again, from the voices from your classrooms? And so I will stop sharing my screen so that I can see some of the questions And we'd love to get some feedback from you. Thank you.
Okay. So you can go ahead and post your thoughts, post your questions in the chat. We did receive one from someone a little earlier with one of the strategies trying to introduce young ladies at a much earlier age to, technology, the STEAM field, computer science. All right. Oh, unmute yourself, Ms. Thompson.
Kidding. We have one question from Aisha. She says, she asked, how can I assist in the Black and Brown Girl in Computer Science movement? I'll say my piece, and I think Kathaleena can probably speak to this more because she has a lot more experience with the space. But if you, and I don't know what your particular role is, but if you have the opportunity to engage Black and Brown girls, just in general, and understand their interests, and possibly plug in how maybe there's an initiative at school, or maybe you can start an initiative at school that focuses on entering girls into that space. And it has to be something unique. We are likely familiar with Girls Who Code and Black Girls Code, and they have unique unique initiatives out there, but they don't have to be the only ones. The more initiatives, the more programs that we have, the more girls that will show interest, because that means that more people or more women that look like them will be in that space, and that will create that comfort within them. But I'll let Kathaleena kind of speak to that too.
Thanks, and thank you, Leanne, for hopping in. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you to the both of you. Can I just very quickly, I've been working in the background behind the scenes to try to get Sabrina on. So just wanted to let you all know that. And so Babu and I will work together to try to get her on as soon as we can, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm rereading the comment. The question is, how can I assist? So one of the things that we see, and I'll back up, because I think that some schools like Spelman College are really doing a good job at getting girls into computer science. Absolutely. That, but I think that they're doing a really good job at getting girls in the community to teach other girls about computer science. The one thing I think that we're lacking, and maybe this is a way to get involved, is really to try to ascertain, what does the data say in terms of the impact that these programs are making. So that's more of a I don't know what that noise is, but the question really is, once you engage girls at younger ages, in elementary, middle, at what point are we losing them? So one of the ways to engage is really to find out, how can we better keep tabs on these girls, because I think that we do lose them along the way. And so one of the things in the earlier session, and I'm trying, again, back to your question, I met already 3 or 4 teachers who are in rural Georgia who are interested in Black and Brown girls to engage. I do think that the spinoff of today's session would certainly be to have conversations around where are the grant dollars. And in an earlier conversation, everyone's doing a call and open letter on how they can support the community now under these circumstances. And I did post a link out there about technology perpetuating racism. I think that when we start using technology and computer science in a way that's just in time, that's real time, then that helps to pull more people to the conversation. I did see a note about counselors. Thank you, David Guy. I can see coursework is determined through counseling departments. What ways can teachers and counselors target girls? I concur. Couldn't have said it better. It's important that we do find ways to work more symbiotically, if you will, I don't know, with counselors. But I have to admit, though, that I think that there's such value in the out-of-school experience as well. This is not saying that it can't happen in the classroom space, but I can say I work quite closely with Girl Scouts of Historic Georgia. And as you know, they recently launched programming badges and computer science badges. And I think that there's some value in getting girls, if they can't get it in the K-12 space or classroom, that we need to certainly capitalize, if you will, on those experiences outside. Yes, Elizabeth. Thank you for that too. Elizabeth has a statement about girls being pulled for peer pressure. In fact, we saw that in the research. We've had teachers say that if Black girls are in the room with just one other Black girl, they're more likely to
say.
If they're the only girl, then they're not. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that this again points back to the research on Black and Latino families' importance of community and community and belongingness. And so I think that could certainly be a strategy. So as we look at recruiting girls, how can we recruit their friends, their girlfriends? And so there's value there. I love Helen. Helen and I have been chatting already. She likes the strategy of merging comp sci with entrepreneurship. And I love your comments. Thank you for that. Someone said, I don't think counselors understand computer science. That could very well be. You know, one of the things that I think COVID-19 is teaching us all is that while we are hired by a title, that I think that there's some intersectionality even with our respective roles as employees. Said that I do think that we do cross lines. So teachers are counseling, and counseling, you know, counselors are, you know, we're all doing quite a bit of the same, you know, at least hopefully we're trying to encourage and inspire, because again, I didn't get to computer science necessarily because my counselor told me to go there. I got there because my teacher thought it was a good fit. Yes, thank you. Nice. Tech camp, yep.
There's another question a few that we may have missed. Linda Brown asked, can you offer sources for designing with culture in mind?
Good.
That's a good question.
It's a good question. And in fact, what I'll do after this session, I'll have to shoot you an email, because I don't have any specific. And in fact, Sabrina would love to be on the session right now, because she told me, Kathy, you need to come up with some actual sources. Very good question. And I will share those with you, Linda.
And that's, I see a similar question from Sandra Watts. It says, what activities can I do in my classroom for girls? I need ideas. And to be honest, for us, that's the path that we're taking, is to create those ideas and create those initiatives with culture in mind, so we can shift the ideology from just teaching girls computer science, but making it attractive to girls, Black and Latino girls, and not only in rural areas, but also in urban areas. But that's the path that we are taking, is to try to figure out what are those activities or those programs or those initiatives that will attract our Black and Latina girls and make it stick, and make them stick with it. I don't know if you can share our screen with our email addresses, and maybe, you know, just it might be an opportunity to collaborate with various parties here to figure out what that looks like for Black and Latina girls. Can you, okay. Can you copy and paste our email addresses? Well, I can do that just in the chat box. So if there are, because this is,
Dr.
you know,
Mounds is on mute. Is she on mute?
Is she on mute? I don't know. I can't hear her.
Okay.
Okay, I've included our email addresses in the chat box. And again, I know we really take this as an opportunity for us to kind of figure out exactly what this looks like. So it's just not another program, another computer science initiative, but how to make it unique and innovative so it sticks with our Black and Latina girls and they can maintain that interest in computer science.
And Don Carter did just post that he uses computer science that addresses many of these topics. And there's a ton of research out there. Obviously, Google and Facebook and a lot of organizations are looking at it. But what I think is quite interesting, a great opportunity, is that it's certainly not been solved, and it creates opportunities for us to continue to engage girls and Black and Latina girls, because while there's a ton of research on their absence, there are not a lot. It's not quite pushing the needle. And again, Black Girls Who Code is doing some phenomenal work. I'm trying to read the comments as well, but we need more organizations like that.
Okay, about 4 minutes left.
Is Sabrina able to hop on? Bless her heart.
Yeah, we were still trying to work on it. I don't know what the issue is. But yeah, so I mean, this has been a wonderful session, and you all had a lot of participation. I saw numbers up to where it's like 85. So we do thank you all for coming out to present, and we thank all of our visitors for sharing in this session and asking very good questions and making very good comments and everything in the chat. So definitely any resources you all know of where you can share with others, please put in the chat as well prior to us leaving. Wanted to really thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you a lot. We appreciate it. And Sababu, will we get a copy of the chat so we can do a follow-up with some of the questions out there?
Yes, I'll be discussing that with Mrs. Diaz, but that is going to be available. And then remember, everyone, the recorded sessions are going to be available on our YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
So recorded sessions. And if you haven't done so already, attendees, could you please fill out the attendance form for this session? Really appreciate it. All right. So I didn't know if Ms. Gomez at least was on in the session without the video, but if she had any closing statements she wanted to say to put in the chat, you could go ahead and type it in the chat. We know you were here
earlier.
We just couldn't see you.
That is so amazing.
But you all did a really good job, because I know kind of she, was going to do a lot.
Is that Sabrina? No, okay. So I think we still have 54 people in our session. So again, we just thank you for your time. We recognize that there are many, many strategies to engage. We also recognize that the work that you're doing in the classroom with the what's and the hows is equally important. And we also would empower each of you to start thinking about your why, because as we see this changing landscape in the economic space, and we must avail opportunities for Black and brown girls, particularly in computer science. So thank you. You guys are awesome. Today was awesome. I think I went to, how many sessions did you go to, Sababu?
Man, I was like in every single one.
They've all been great. So thank you.
3 together, I know for sure. At least 3, 4. Okay. So I think that's about our time right now.
Okay.
The presenters did put their emails in the chat, so if you want to go ahead and jot that down to communicate with them. And thank you all. That's all, folks, for now. We'll see you at the next session, which is at 4 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And as people leave, if they have, like, I just saw Margaret leave her email. I guess that will come out. Okay. That'll be downloaded, and then that way we can do follow up. Okay.
All right.
All right, Victor, AUC. Okay. Wow. So Baba, when did you graduate from Morehouse?
I graduated in 95, and I am part of a Spell House couple because my wife graduated from Spelman in 96.
No way.
Yes,
Were you a computer science major?
I was not. I was a mathematics and French major.
Wow, that's impressive.
Thank you. When I saw Spelman, I was like, "Oh, my sisters, yes."
Sisters from Clark, Atlanta. Wow.
I had a sister from, you know how the college sisters or whatever. Like my college sister actually was from Clark and not Spelman.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But that's okay. I got my wife from Spelman.
That's different. I know normally they would give you, I thought they would give you one of each. Like they gave me a Clark sister and then they gave me a Morehouse brother during the olive branch ceremony. So I don't know how you missed out on your Spelman sister.
That's right. Okay. I got one at home now. So
you got one at home.
Right.
What was your wife's major?
Her major was biology with a concentration in natural science. Now,
okay.
I don't know how many people still on, and she probably gonna be like, "Why are you telling people my business?" But she started out being a computer science major.
Oh wow!
But wound up changing for some, different reasons or what have you. But ended up being a biology major at the end.
Oh, that is amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I was asking about computer science because there's a professor there named Dr. Kenneth Gaucher. Bonjour, Sababu.
Bien sûr. Allô, bonjour. Je vais bien.
You know Kenneth Gaucher?
Yes, I do.
Okay, yeah, he's an Albany State graduate. I didn't teach him, but he's just doing great work. And then he went to Clemson and graduated under Juan Gilbert, who's like the godfather of PhDs in computer science, American PhDs.
Well, yeah, I met him because my son actually attended one of the summer camps at Morehouse in collaboration with Dr. Erickson and Georgia Tech, before she moved on. And that's when I first met Dr. Gaucher.
That's a small world. We've got to get Georgia Tech down in South Georgia because we got kids who need access to those programs, but we need to find a way, or if not Georgia Tech, partner with Georgia Tech and Albany State. They just don't. Hi, Helen. I can't wait to reach out to Helen Hall. These opportunities just don't avail in rural towns. Thank you. Now we don't have to fill out that attendance form, right?
No, because you all are presenters. So I mean, we know you all were here. Even Ms. Gomez was here too. But,
right.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and log off because I have to prepare for my next session. But it was wonderful. You all recovered. I want to fly. So that was tight.
Thanks for the help. We appreciate it.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye.